The next morning, Massey opened the door to admire the weather outside. It had been a long time since there had been such a beautiful day, so Kristen could rest a bit. She remembered that last night, Kristen had told her to go to sleep first because it was raining heavily, and he needed to patrol for a while. Thinking back, the last time they slept together was after the last banquet. She suddenly recalled that night and wondered why she was thinking about it now. At that moment, Rudy's voice startled her. "Lady Massey," Rudy stammered, "what a beautiful day it is today, isn't it?" Rudy bowed and said, "After endless rain, there will be sunny days." The past few days felt like it rained endlessly. Everyone was more cautious and busy fixing a few leaks and running around the castle to fixing a few leaks and running around the castle. "My lady, the rain has stopped. Are you feeling better?" Rudy asked. Massey smiled, "Yes, I am very happy. The heavy rain caused everyone to work hard." Rudy shared, "Ah yes, everyone is busy doing laundry now that we finally have sunshine to dry the clothes." Massey looked at a slightly wilted blue flower. "It's been a few days since it was brought here." Rudy asked her, "Should we change the water? That will help keep the flowers fresh for longer. Later, if the flowers dry out, we can press them." Massey happily thanked him, "Thank you." That afternoon, Massey was still studying diligently in the library, lying sprawled across the table. For safety reasons, the balcony and windows needed new wallpaper, which might be quite a lot. "I estimate the cost for the renovations as frugally as possible, but there are too many types of currency and such large amounts that I can't grasp it. Like other noble ladies, I've never held even a single coin in my life. No, I must work as hard as Kristen does." Suddenly, a knock on the door startled her, and Massey immediately sat up straight. "As a lady, I must behave properly, must be excellent, like the true mistress of the castle," she thought, smoothing her hair. "I can't let everyone see me looking so disheveled." She quickly composed herself and responded calmly, "What is it?" The servant reported, "The Lord has sent a message that he will have dinner in the dining hall with the knights. Would you like to join him?" Massey immediately brightened, her cheeks flushing with excitement. "I think I'll finish my work early today. We'll have time to dine together. The knights are still somewhat displeased with me, but I promise I'll change their opinions." She nodded to Rudy, and they headed to the dining room where the butler was already waiting at the door. "My lady, you've arrived," the servant greeted her respectfully. As the door opened, a loud shout rang out. "Even now, it's too late to leave." Hearing the fierce shouting, Massey hesitated, afraid to step inside. Kristen's stern voice bellowed, "Don't make me remind you again. We will depart in 3 days." A soldier yelled, "You have to attend the victory celebration. Do you think the king will wait patiently? I agree with this scoundrel for once. The rain has stopped, which means we must depart as soon as possible," another voice chimed in. Kristen hesitated, "The rain has only stopped briefly. I've already sent a messenger pigeon. I've only just returned to the territory after 3 long years. King Zubin will understand." The soldier shouted back, "I know the commander wants to maintain distance, but we shouldn't lose the king's favor." Kristen immediately frowned, "Watch yourself, Ilias." Ilias explained, "We all know that King Aloma Reuben has a temper. If you don't comply, Commander, the king won't let it slide. Besides, aren't you planning to attend the victory celebration in the capital? I understand why you want to keep your distance from those people, especially with the trouble involving the princess and the king's desire to control everything, but you shouldn't reject him so outright. The king isn't the type to trust the lords easily. If we don't attend the celebration, the king will think you are disrespecting him in front of the court, and who knows what obstacles we'll face. You know the king holds grudges." Another soldier shouted, "Bonita, how dare you speak such disrespectful words?" Kristen spoke up, "Despite their objections, you talk too much. We will proceed according to my plan." Massey stood outside, listening to everything. Are we returning to the capital just to face arguments like this? She couldn't help but cover her mouth, feeling the pressure. Massey stammered, I feel so tired. Rudy asked, My lady, what about dinner? Massey quickly turned away, Please bring my dinner to my room. I'm sorry to trouble you. She hurried away, ignoring the servant calling after her. In her room, Massey sat thinking. 3 more days, and Kristen has to leave again. Suddenly, the door opened. I heard you were tired. You should go to bed early, Kristen said. Massey turned her face away. No, it's fine. You're the one who's tired. You had to get up early this morning too. She stole a worried glance at him. Does he just want me to go to bed so he doesn't have to deal with me? Maybe he's tired of me already? Since she had been there, he only came to the room when she was already asleep. Even last night, we only slept. No, that's not what I meant, not need to do that thing, but, she thought, blushing. What am I thinking? She stammered, I am glad it didn't rain today. Kristen mumbled, I wish it would rain endlessly. When she looked at him in confusion and asked him to repeat, Kristen blushed and quickly said, Nothing, it's nothing. Under the firelight, Massey occasionally glanced at Kristen while she read her book. She frowned, thinking, why doesn't he say anything to me? Am I not important enough to know? No, that can't be it. The rainy season isn't over yet, so we probably can't depart immediately. Maybe he hasn't told me because he's still considering the situation? He glanced at her, is something wrong? Massey stammered, I suppose you must cherish that sword a lot. I thought polishing it was a task for the servants. She silently berated herself for being foolish. I should have asked when he plans to depart for the capital, not babbled about trivial things. Kristen looked at the sword and said, I've been doing it myself since I was 14, so I'm used to it and don't want anyone else handling this friend of mine. It's one of the finest 10 swords on the entire continent. I won it in my first sword fighting competition. Massey, excited, asked, sword fighting? You won? He nodded proudly, of course. She remembered the duels between swordsmen. Her father often took Jeddah along, while she was confined to her room, only able to imagine the events through reading novels. Jeddah always complained about how brutal, noisy, and dirty the fights were, but even that made Massey feel envious. In the novels I've read, the brave hero who wins the sword in the tournament always receives a kiss from a noble lady. That's the climax of the entire story. So, Kristen, you must have. She stammered, you must have been kissed too? Suddenly, she realized she had spoken aloud. Why did I say that out loud? Massey quickly covered her mouth. No, it's nothing. I read a story once about a knight and a princess. When the knight won, he received a kiss from the princess. I thought that scene was so romantic. In her mind, she kept scolding herself, remembering her father's advice, I should have kept my mouth shut. Kristen sighed, not apologizing for disappointing her. But not every situation calls for that, right? We shouldn't dwell on such embarrassing matters. Massey felt awkward, but the kiss from a noble lady was an honor for a knight. It was a tradition, meaning the knight pledged loyalty to the lady. Kristen shrugged, does it really matter? Massey felt disappointed. Does that mean you've pledged yourself to someone? If so, then some noble lady must have received Kristen's pledge of loyalty. Just thinking about it made her heart ache, and she furrowed her brow, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, Kristen slammed his hand on the table and stood up, leaning in close to her face, making her jump. He leaned in closer, asking, What's wrong? You don't seem okay. Massey hesitated, feeling cornered. I am okay. Just a bit tired, she managed to say. Kristen noticed something strange. What's this? It looked like a toy. She explained, it's a model of a chandelier for decorating the banquet hall. She worried he might think it was a waste of money. Then she asked, should we keep the hall as it is? Kristen shook his head. No, we'll have to welcome many guests soon. They promised to visit Anatole. He stroked her hair and promised to make the banquet hall the most magnificent in the world. I know I can't meet your standards, and I know how luxurious life is at Christ Castle. But soon, I won't keep you waiting. I'll depart for the capital and return with many gifts just for you. She hesitated, feeling deeply disappointed. He really had to leave. But she didn't want to be left alone. Kristen clenched his teeth and sighed. Goodness, he muttered. He leaned against her and wrapped his arm around her thigh, clearly reluctant to leave even for a moment. I wish I could stay here and rest forever, she thought. It was his first time returning home in 3 years, only to be forced to leave again. She felt childish for only thinking about herself. Suddenly, she reached out her hand and gently touched Kristen's face, comforting him. I want that too, she said softly. Kristen smiled. I have to restrain myself a lot, you know. You don't realize what you've just done, he teased, licking her thigh. But it was too late to contain the fire now. She flinched, blushing, and whispered, Kristen. Massey quickly interrupted him, wait. On the rainy night, the soldiers sighed, acknowledging that their leader seemed to know the weather better than any demon. Mimicking Kristen's voice, he said, in 3 days, we'll depart. If you notice any issues, feel free to leave ahead of time. He laughed, I imitate the leader perfectly, don't I? They laughed, but if the rain didn't stop tomorrow, they'd have to revise their plans. He confidently assured them, don't worry about the weather. The leader has never been wrong, not even once. Sometimes, they wondered if he was truly human or just a commander. When will you change your title from a hired soldier to a leader? Someone joked. He confidently replied, there must be a reason why it's called a habit, right? They asked Ruth, hey, Mage, what do you think? Is the leader mutated? Ruth smirked, oh, come on, can't you speak sensibly? You know his temperament. I'd be dead if the leader caught me gossiping like this. One soldier suddenly asked, by the way, how long have you known the leader? Ruth sighed, I first met him when he was probably 16. It's been a long time. He looks younger than I thought. They were shocked. 16? You really met him when he was that young? Unbelievable. Can you imagine what young Kristen, the leader, looked like? Ruth recounted, back then, he was just like he is now. Actually, he seemed even more daring and ruthless. It's like he lived as if there were no tomorrow. Another person suddenly remembered, come to think of it, I've had this feeling. We haven't seen the leader for a few days, have we? The servant said he's been spending most of his time in his bedroom. Who would have thought that our seemingly cold and indifferent leader would be infatuated with the daughter of the Duke of Christ? Ruth was annoyed. If everyone's done spouting nonsense, please eat quickly and go to bed. There's still plenty of important work to do. After saying that, they all burst into laughter. I still can't believe it, someone exclaimed incredulously. Kristen gently embraced her on the bed after leaving the bathroom. How are you feeling? Any pain anywhere? Massey was startled. I'm fine, she replied softly. He handed her a glass of water, saying, here, drink this. Massey took it, but hesitated to drink. She wondered what he thought of her. Kristen reminded her, rest now. I know you're exhausted. She sighed. Yes, I am tired, but is it okay for me to just lie here like this, doing nothing? The servants will surely look down on me, thinking I'm a lazy master who stays in bed all day. He gently fed her grapes. She chewed slowly while he kept staring at her. He suddenly say damn it, because of feeling jealous of the grapes, that's making Massey oblivious. Then she noticed, you have a scratch on your skin here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Does it hurt? Kristen suddenly looked away. Even when battling the Balak death serpent, my blood didn't flow a single drop. Massey worriedly offered apologies and suggested calling someone to bring medicine. Kristen stared at her intently, leaving Massey flustered. Indeed, a dangerous creature, she muttered to herself. Then suddenly, he leaned down and passionately kissed Massey. He gently laid her down on the bed again, and from that very moment, I could see that I knew you would be like that with me. My whole body felt raw from your scratches. Kristen leaned down to kiss her neck, causing Massey to startle, then he gently stroked her small hand, signaling for the two of them to continue their playful antics throughout the day. Time kept passing along with the heavy rain. Night turned into dawn, and the sun shone brightly just like that day. The next day, sunlight returned to the territory of Anatun. Early that morning, Massey was still lying in bed. The servants in the castle were busy preparing. Massey opened her eyes, and sunlight streamed into the room. She looked at the polite servants and asked them, "Does anyone know where Kristen is?" She felt a bit disappointed. Had he left while she was still sleeping? The servant replied, "The Lord is at the training ground with the guards. He said he will depart around noon tomorrow." Massey breathed a sigh of relief. She got out of bed, thinking that this time she could say goodbye to him. Outside, the servants were busily urging each other, "Have you loaded all the things onto the car? Be careful here." Massey dressed beautifully and followed the butler's instructions, "Please inform the Lord that lunch is ready." After changing her clothes, Massey immediately ran down. She could spend a little more time before he departed. At the training ground, Kristen sternly said, "I do not accept this. Everyone among us should be equally respected. All knights who participated in the battle must be present at the victory celebration." Ruth raised his hand in support, "Sir Khalees is right. Knight Zenzago should be present at the celebration. Sir Ovazone and Sir Syke are already protecting Anatole. I'm also planning to stay in the city." Kristen sighed, "I would feel more at ease if you stayed." Then he suddenly noticed a small figure peeking from the door, his expression turning puzzled. "Let's end the meeting," he said. The soldiers responded in unison, "Yes, Commander." Massey hesitated outside. "I rushed here without thinking. How can I approach him? What if I disturb him?" Suddenly, a tall man appeared in front of her. Kristen had run outside without her noticing. Massey stammered, "Rodzigo said lunch is ready, so I came to inform you." He spoke loudly, "Everyone, attention. It's time for lunch." He bowed his head, concerned, "By the way, how are you feeling? Last night after we finished, you said you were in pain." Massey, startled and flustered, replied, I'm fine." Kristen smiled, "I wish you could say that while we were tussling in bed." Massey stammered, You can't say such things. What if someone hears us?" He suddenly reached out to her, "My innocent lady." Then he frowned, looking worried, and hugged Massey tightly. "Damn it, I really don't want to leave at all." Massey thought, he has to depart soon. She patted Kristen's back, You hang in there." In her heart, she wished, "I hope he could stay a little longer." Massey stammered, "Come on, it's time to eat. Everyone is waiting." Then the two of them went to the dining hall together. Massey was anxious all the way. The walk to the dining hall seemed far, but it was too close, and she couldn't utter a word until that noon. At departure time, Kristen mounted his horse and advised, "I will go and return soon. Massey, awkwardly, travel safely. Take care of yourself." Hearing this, Kristen felt soothed. "Those are the only words I need from you." He bent down and kissed her hair, making Massey blush deeply. Kristen smiled, "I will return soon." Massey said, I will wait for you." Then the group of knights set off. They left the castle of Anatole together. Massey stood there watching the knights gradually disappear. The butler suddenly spoke up, "He is changed." Massey turned to look when she heard him. He smiled, this is the first time the Lord has told everyone that he will return soon. It's all thanks to you, my lady. To be honest, before the Lord took over, Anatole was just a barren land. Then the walls were built to protect the people. The Lord worked very hard to rebuild Anatole. He took on the task of fighting monsters, and even used his own money to build the walls. Now, he still continues to protect the people, but he always leaves without ever promising a return date. The butler, choking with emotion, continued, "We were very worried that he might never come back. I believe that only after you came here did the Lord begin to consider this place his home." Massey frowned. "Home?" He and the other servants smiled happily. "We are very glad that you have come, my lady." Massey wondered to herself, "Do I deserve to hear such kind words? I haven't done anything for Kristen. Everyone knows that I'm useless." She clutched her dress tightly. "Kristen and everyone here might start treating me the way my father did. If I get abandoned again, Just one night after Kristen left, the emptiness from his departure was soon filled with anxiety. "If I fall ill," the servants anxiously gathered around her bed. They said, "My lady, you have symptoms of severe stress. Don't worry, you will get better soon. It seems that fatigue, the accumulation of long travel and adjusting to a new environment, has exhausted you." One servant said, "Today I will take care of the lady, the rest of you go rest. Don't forget to get more medicine from the wizard in the morning." Massey, dazed on the bed, heard a warm and caring voice beside her. At this moment, Rudy spoke up, "My lady, you must be very tired." Massey began to cry. It seemed that this voice was warmer than her feverish body. "If this continues, I'm afraid I'll become greedy and long for this warmth." The group of knights continued through the forest until nightfall. In the nearby grass, growling sounds arose, and strange creatures charged at them. The knights defeated them with just a few sword strokes, then continued on their way. Some of them complained, "The monsters keep coming continuously. Why are there more monsters the closer we get to the capital? This is a shortcut? No wonder." They kept turning to each other. "I like clearing the road, but this is horrible even for me." As they grew more exhausted, they looked at the blonde soldier and wondered, how does he stay so neat and clean? The red-haired soldier, annoyed, shouted, "Damn monsters, get the hell out of here." They all spurred their horses to gallop faster. Kristen led the group on horseback. He suddenly recalled Massey's words, I will wait for you to return." His brow furrowed, and he looked straight ahead, gripping the reins tightly with determination. Kristen shouted loudly, "Anyone who falls behind, take care of yourself." They all responded with effort, "Understood, Commander." At this moment in the castle, a servant reminded Massey, "It's very cold outside." She stammered, I'm fine." Rudy draped a coat over her. "Even so, my lady, you were just ill for 2 days. If you overwork yourself again." He suddenly looked down, and she saw a young boy struggling to carry a heavy bucket of water. Children this young already have to work, she thought. The man below patted the boy's head. "Well done, you carried the whole bucket without spilling much." Massey thought to herself, the boy looked very happy to be contributing with everyone. She suddenly looked up at the sky. She didn't know when she would be able to smile brightly like that. Massey remained silent, feeling the sunlight and imagining childhood memories. "If I wasn't born a boy, at least I should have been like other people, not to die miserably like your mother." Those horrifying words rushed back, causing Massey to shudder. She bowed her head sadly. At this moment, the servant noticed her exhaustion and asked, "Madam?" Rudy, seeing her trembling figure, asked her, "You're cold. Do you want to come inside?" In Massey's mind, she remembered the words Kristen had said, promising to let her have her way. When he mentioned that he would return soon, she worriedly squeezed his hand and softly said, "I don't want to disappoint you, Kristen." If she could smoothly complete all tasks under the guise of being the castle's mistress, then perhaps even when Kristen grew tired of her, he would allow her to stay by his side. And she was determined to change. Massey said to Judy, "Please call the merchant guild for me." She thought to herself, "Though I promised to try to complete all the tasks I've been assigned, now." Ruth, sitting with Massey in the library, spoke out, scolding, "How many things did you miscalculate? A single marble tile costs 20 lira. Madam, it's dirham, not lira. Massey, flustered, said, is there really such a big difference? Help remind me that 1 lira is equal to 12 dirham. If we go by your calculations, Lord Kristen would definitely go bankrupt. He might have to dive into a dragon's lair to slay another one soon. Massey trembled with worry, because I'm not used to managing the books. Ruth reminded her, then you should have said so earlier. The steward would understand. He put the pile of papers down on the table. I'll report this to the steward when I get back. Massey suddenly panicked, blushing and standing up, shouting, no, no. You said you would help me. Ruth was taken aback, looking at the lady's trembling figure. A few days ago, after meeting with the Merchant Guild and deciding to start repairing some necessary items the next day, Massey sighed, the wizard won't be angry with me, will he? These days, even in the dining room. Thinking about this, she suddenly paused. Massey suddenly saw the servants. They awkwardly bowed and greeted, Madam. Massey looked at them in confusion. The day before, she had complained, the day is already over. Massey lay sprawled on the table in frustration. She thought to herself, I still don't understand anything. Should I be doing this? There are so many things I have to prepare, the amount of materials seems endless, and I can't figure it out. I don't even know if I'm doing it right or wrong. Massey helplessly looked at the pile of papers, I'm so worried. She suddenly felt disappointed and sighed, laying her head down on the table. Suddenly, in the corner, something strange and black sneaked into the pile of books to hide and then suddenly caused a loud noise that startled Massey. She immediately stood up in a panic. What was that noise? At this moment, a cloaked figure was standing nearby in silence. Massey was bewildered when she saw him. It was Ruth, who poked his head out and grumbled, Why have you been so noisy these days? Massey exclaimed in panic, Ruth. The two sat facing each other in the study room. Ruth, annoyed, said, Every time I'm about to take a nap, why have you been so noisy these days? Massey stammered, I was noisy when... Ruth recounted, You have been constantly complaining in the library. Don't you know you're disturbing my sleep? Massey blushed, panicking, Wait, has he been watching me these past days? Why didn't I notice? She stammered, I thought I was the only one here. Ruth sighed in frustration, being loud in the library is very rude. Massey pointed at Ruth, but you are the one who uses the library as a bedroom. Ruth suddenly bowed his head, looking intimidating, Perhaps you don't know, but my lady, even at midnight, people come running to request the mage for healing. Ruth recounted, that night, the servant urgently called out, Please, can someone use magic to heal her? I helplessly replied, She is simply exhausted. Magic won't help. But they also requested herbal remedies. I know I am the only mage in the castle, so I understand their desperation. But being disturbed day and night like this... Massey's mood suddenly dropped as she felt guilty. She stammered, I'm sorry. Ruth waved it off, It's all right, that's my duty anyway. I'm glad you've recovered. By the way, can I ask what you are doing here? He looked down at the table, Are these the castle's records? Ruth reached for the ledger, and Massey, startled, yelled, don't look. Then he suddenly opened his eyes wide. Surprised, Ruth trembled, How is this possible? Massey panicked, Please give it back to me. He frowned and turned back, How much have you spent already? Massey stammered, Well, Kristen said I don't need to worry about money. Ruth shouted, What do you mean? If you need help, you should speak up. And that's how the tutoring with Ruth began. Ruth explained, When I said find someone to help I meant Rodrigo. Massey worried, But you agreed to help me. She thought if she asked Rodrigo, he would definitely think she was incompetent. Ruth sarcastically said, You're as shameless as your husband. She suddenly blushed, How can that be? Kristen and I are completely different. He is very trustworthy and very sincere. He is a very kind person. Those compliments made Ruth feel sick. He sighed, Please focus. After just a few minutes, Massey scolded, Wrong again. Here, and here. Another mistake. Massey nodded repeatedly. She trembled and said, can you look over here? Ruth immediately interrupted, that's enough for today. Massey lay down exhausted, thank you. Even Ruth was exhausted to death. That afternoon, after finishing the lesson, Massey stammered, can you help me cut down on expenses? Thank you. Ruth sighed, Madam, you are just unbearable, just like him. Truly unbearable. They walked down the hallway to their rooms, noticing that his steps stopped before a tree. Massey looked puzzled and asked, Wizard Ruth. He looked up, I see you have plans to renovate the garden, right? She nodded, yes, I'm not sure if Kristen will like it though. Ruth reminded, the servants will be upset if you ask them to cut down this tree. She said, but I heard this tree is dead, it doesn't even grow any leaves. Cutting it down for firewood would be better, right? Ruth explained, the people of Anatole believe that a goddess resides in the trees, so they are very careful when cutting trees, even dead ones. Besides, this is an oak tree. Massey wondered, what's so special about an oak tree? Ruth looked up, I bet you know the legend of Squidward, don't you? The story every child hears at least once in their life about the man who ended the ancient, dark war with a sword blessed by God and founded a mighty empire. The legend says he rode a white dragon to the heavens after fulfilling his duty. This legend holds a special place for the people of Anatole. They believe he rode the dragon of the heavens from the hill outside Anatole Castle. The people of Anatole grew up with this story passed down through generations, so you must know the famous love story between Squidward and the tree goddess. Everyone believes the goddess is still waiting for Squidward to return, so every spring festival, all the virgins go to the field to sing blessings for the goddess's love. Massey stammered, so, if I cut down the oak tree for firewood. Ruth continued, then the people will hate you. They won't show it openly because you are the lady of this land, but the people here hold Squidward in the highest regard. These words made Massey panic. She was bewildered, what should I do? I can't leave this dead tree here, it looks so creepy. Ruth glanced at Massey's anxious look and sighed helplessly, let me see if I can revive this tree. Soon after, the castle servants started gossiping, have you heard? The lady has asked the wizard to revive the oak tree in the castle. Another one said, my God, that dead tree? Emily shared, the lady has been in the library until late at night, worrying about reorganizing the castle. No wonder the merchants have been visiting the castle so often lately. Rudy worried, the lady is overworking herself, especially after just recovering from an illness. They recalled the day the lady first arrived, she calmed down the Lord's anger towards us, remember? As they peeled potatoes, they chatted, I was so scared, couldn't even breathe. Another added, I almost fainted. They giggled, the Lord is handsome, but he's different with the lady. Another agreed, right, I've never seen him smile so brightly. Those rumors about his affairs with Lord Acnes must be false. If they were true, why would he bring the lady to the castle? Someone added, not to mention, the Lord keeps reminding us to respect the lady as much as possible. Another one said loudly, the Lord said if we're rude to the lady, we'd be kicked out of the castle. Another servant shared, I heard from the merchants that Castle Chryse is even more luxurious than the royal palace. Compared to the Duke of Anatole's territory, it's really... Suddenly, a man threw down his basket and shouted, enough with the chit-chat. I don't know about anything else, but I'm sure the food here is 1,000 times better than at Chryse Castle. A servant laughed, Anatole is way out on the frontier, how could the food be better? The man laughed heartily, you say that because you haven't seen the lady's sparkling eyes every time she eats. But I'm 100% sure. A cheerful servant added, that's right. Rudy said the lady loves tea. The man proudly declared, see? The lady will fall in love with Anatole. It's all thanks to the work done in this kitchen. I was worried we'd have to serve someone demanding, but those rumors are completely false. I haven't had much interaction with the lady, but she seems like a kind-hearted noblewoman. All right, enough with the idle gossip. Let's get back to work. That afternoon, still in the library, Ruth focused on reading the calculation notes that Massey had given her. Massey worriedly thought, did I make a mistake again? Suddenly, he threw the pen onto the table. I think this is good. I don't see any mistakes. At this point, Massey breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at the shiny coins of different values on the table, then her eyes lit up as she gently touched one of them. So this is a dirham silver coin, the currency used on the southern continent. And this huge coin is a lira. Massey eagerly looked at them. The sizes are completely different. She suddenly looked at Ruth with sparkling eyes. He sighed in frustration. What is it now? She asked him, why are we still using the currency of the Jom Empire from the southern continent? The Jom Empire has been collapsed for so long, and the southern continent. Ruth glanced despondently and replied, I didn't think you would ask that question. He spread out a piece of paper and asked, what do you know about the western continent? Massey thought for a moment and replied, I know the western continent consists of 7 kingdoms, including our own Erden. Ruth said seriously, but before that, the western continent was under the rule of the Jom Empire. Before that period, the entire continent was divided into 10 kingdoms. Lord Darren, along with 10 heroes from those kingdoms, united the entire continent to form the Jom Empire. After the Jom dynasty collapsed, the continent was fragmented into 7 different kingdoms, and Erden was one of them. The kings and lords engaged in countless battles to protect and expand their territories. Then, the nations had to sign a truce to combat the increasing number of monsters. That was 30 years ago. Although the Zoem family has been stripped of all their power and closely monitored, we still use their currency because they were once a great power. The person who benefits the most from this situation is Duke Kreis. He was one of the lords of Erden and successfully took over the fertile lands of the Zoem family. However, since the 7 kingdoms signed the truce agreement, Dant has been pressuring the Duke to return the territory. He had taken their lands, so he lost almost half of his territory. Then, the Duke decided to marry a member of the Zoem family to retain his lands. He married your mother, Anita Zoem. Your mother was the first in line to inherit the Zoem family, and this marriage allowed him to avoid territorial disputes. This story is well known across the continent. A few years ago, the new king requested the Genzagon Knights to mediate for Duke Kristen. Annoying as hell. He clicked his tongue and said, I guess the Duke has different strategies now. He clenched his fists in anger. She looked away, feeling disappointed. Ruth didn't say it outright, but I understood what he meant. It's about the marriage between Joetta and the royal family. Since then, father has become stricter with me because he fears I might hinder her. Ruth hesitated. I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to make it clear that the Zoem name still holds influence. Massey waved her hand. No, you didn't upset me at all. So, what about the currency in the southern continent? Ruth replied, their trade is more developed, so we use their currency as well. If a coin has too high a value, transactions become inconvenient. We can't just split a coin into tiny pieces to buy a single apple, right? It's good for you to know more about Banto and Shirkan too. Their currencies are similar to Zoem's. We're establishing a trade route between those countries directly to Anatole. Hopefully, it will yield results by next spring. Additionally, there is the circle coin, made of bronze and commonly used by the general population, while the Dant coin is reserved only for the upper class. Remembering all this mess should be fine. Oh, remember that the Dant coin is the highest valued Zoem currency in the world. It's as big as a book and cast from Orichicone. There are only 600 Dant coins in the entire continent, but Sir Kristen already owns 160 of them. Massey immediately admired him. He found them 6 years ago in a monster cave in OSA. At that time, he hunted monsters like a madman and collected all kinds of treasures in this world. In the treasure vault, the Dant coin is worth more than all the treasures he has, about 200 coins in total. However, he spent 40 coins to build walls and roads in the village, and to repair many things. Massey exclaimed in surprise, he did everything with just 40 coins? Ruth immediately retorted angrily, 20 coins would have been enough. He rushed the construction process so much that the end result is subpar. Such a waste of money. I can't even imagine how much we've spent on Anatole already. Massey felt somewhat hesitant, thinking that Ruth became intimidating whenever money was mentioned. He maintained a troubled expression. We still have to spend more in the future. I can't allow any extravagance. I cannot let that happen. I have to review the spending plan again. She wanted to attach this expensive type of glasses to the window? What kind of wasteful spending is this? Is this the level of the Zoem Empire? A crystal fountain? What a waste! Cancel the order. And what's this now? You know how much it would cost to cover the entire grand hall with marble tiles? You really don't know anything in this world. The day after the meeting with the trade union, Massey expressed his concern. I want to cancel some of the orders that have been placed. The overseer's face turned purple with anxiety. Madam, canceling the orders now will be very complicated. You've already approved them all. She replied, I apologize, but we haven't started construction yet. The overseer pleaded, please, reconsider before. She sighed inwardly, thinking, I'm sorry, Ando, but Ruth's relentless pressure is a bit overwhelming compared to my tolerance. Not long after, the castle undergoing renovation work began to transform. As the materials from the trade union arrived, the servants felt eager as the castle gradually underwent its transformation. The steward reported, as per Madam's request, we have replaced all the windows in the banquet hall and the 8 largest living rooms in the castle. The windows in the rooms designated for the ladies have been replaced with crystal. The windows in the training ground, library, and dining area have been replaced with Baltic glass. I have instructed the workers accordingly. For the remaining rooms, we will use sheepskin covers and install blinking doors. What about the wall sconces and the hearths, Madam? Massey hesitated, please ensure everything is tidy. I want to place hearths in the grand hall and along the corridors. Remember to add 2 more hearths to the kitchen. The rest can be taken to the training ground and the guard stations. The steward nodded, I understand, Madam. Deep within, Massey was still pondering, but I still feel unsettled and overly occupied with the construction work, so I forgot that I need to prepare for winter. With Kristen away, I have to manage everything meticulously. At the very least, the castle's expenses are meticulously recorded and calculated. According to the list, I need to review the castle's reserves and inventory to see if they are sufficient. Today, I have to visit the stables and the forge as well, and then... Suddenly, a voice echoed in Massey's ear, I bet Lord Kristen will be pleasantly surprised when he returns. Massey shuddered, turning back to glance at the servants chatting among themselves. The castle looked stunning now, and with the upcoming changes to the chandeliers, it would be even more beautiful. Lord Kristen will surely be pleased to see it, she thought. Massey felt a bit embarrassed and worried inside, wondering if he would truly be pleased. What if he thought she had overstepped her bounds? Upon hearing that, Massey's spirits were immediately lifted, and she reassured herself, well, even Ruth says it's okay. Without further ado, she hurried off to check the stables. Massey rushed off, clutching the inventory ledger, and arrived at the stables. The man cleaning there was startled to see her and quickly greeted her, Madam, what wind brought you here? Why isn't anyone escorting you? Massey hesitantly asked, do you need anything else to prepare for the winter? The man replied, I think we need new partitions for the stalls. These young, playful horses can be quite mischievous, but our carpenter's tools are very old, and we don't have enough wood. Massey nodded understandingly. Is there anything else you need? She asked. We also need more dried grass reserves for the winter, Madam, he added. Massey smiled. I'll add everything to the ordering list, she assured him. The old man thanked her and prayed for blessings upon her. Massey sighed, looking at her ledger. She would need to order more wood, carpentry tools, and dried grass for the horses. Managing an entire castle was truly not an easy task. She closed the ledger with a heavy heart, wondering if she was on the right path. At least now, she no longer felt anxious meeting strangers, and her tongue, though still occasionally tight, was looser than it had been a year ago. As the wind suddenly swept through her, Massey's hair fluttered in the breeze. She recalled those words, your hair looked like fiery red clouds. Massey lifted her head, looking up at the sky, filled with hope that he would arrive safely. During any celebratory occasion, he always appeared magnificent, captivating the hearts of noble ladies with his regal presence. After all, he was a hero admired across the entire continent. If any elegant young lady were to charm him, would Kristen regret his previous decision? Would he consider staying by me side a mistake? Suddenly, a voice echoed, causing Massey to startle. "Madam, what are you doing here alone?" Massey looked around, wondering who it could be. A couple of soldiers appeared, looking somewhat bewildered. "No need to be alarmed, madam," one of them said to the other. "I think you frightened the lady, Eunice." "What?" "No, not at all," Massey replied, now realizing they were her guards whom she had met at the previous feast. She stammered, "It's okay." In her confusion, Massey wondered how she should address them. At that moment, one of the soldiers remembered and slapped his chest, announcing loudly, "Forgive me for the late introduction, madam. I am Ulyss Jova. Next year, I'll be old enough to become a knight." The other soldier, Gazkion, also politely greeted her. Massey hesitated, "I'm Maximilian." Ulyss interrupted, asking why she was walking alone. "Oh, no, I'm just inspecting the castle," Massey replied. Ulyss commented that even though they were in the castle grounds, there were still dangers lurking, especially with recent visitors to the castle being more frequent. Excitedly, the young soldier offered to escort her. "Madam, allow me to accompany you. Though I may not yet be a knight, I would gladly sacrifice my life to protect you." Massey hesitated but eventually accepted. "Oh, all right then." Ulyss seemed disappointed, perhaps thinking she didn't trust him. "Maybe she doesn't find me trustworthy," he pondered. Reluctantly, Massey agreed, "Very well, please escort me." Ulyss brightened up. "I won't disappoint you, madam." After that, two soldiers walked ahead while Massey followed them. She silently wondered if it was appropriate for her to be doing so. Other knights were usually intimidating, but these two gave off a less intimidating vibe. Maybe it was because they were young. Suddenly, Ulyss shouted, making her jump, "Why, my lady, are you visiting the forge?" Massey hesitantly replied, "I heard that the merchants would visit the castle less in winter, so I wanted to check if anyone needed anything." Ulyss nodded, "We're also heading to the forge. Last time during training, I broke my sword. I wonder if I'll impress Sir Kristen even a tenth as much." Gazzo chimed in, "Next year, we'll be Knights of Genzagon. Don't you think that's our purpose?" Ulyss quickly interjected, "Hey, you have no idea how esteemed Sir Kristen is. Forget about impressing him a tenth, being acknowledged by him is already outstanding." Massey asked, "Is Kristen really that exceptional?" He was ecstatic, saying, "Exceptional isn't enough to describe him, ma'am. He's considered the epitome of valor, not to mention the strongest knight on the continent. 6 years ago, he defeated C. Sorculazan of Livad in a friendly match and outmatched Helion of Osa in a duel while on a dragon-slaying mission. Sir Kristen emerged victorious against 2 out of the 5 knights regarded as the paragon of Squidguard. After witnessing his swordsmanship, I was determined to become a knight. By the time of the dragon expedition, Sir Kristen was already at the pinnacle of his prowess. Have you ever seen him wield his sword?" She stuttered, "Of course, I have seen him." She thought back to the time she fainted, wondering if that counted. "But I don't want to say I haven't seen myself as his wife yet." Massey interjected hesitantly, "I witnessed Kristen split a giant boulder in half with a single swing. I was exhilarated to see him defeat a dozen opponents in the blink of an eye." The two soldiers were truly amazed, all 10 giants. "Please, tell us the details," they urged. Massey hesitated, unable to find the words. "Well, we were sitting in the carriage when suddenly a loud scream pierced the quiet air. The sound was chilling, and for a moment, I thought the sky was falling. Kristen immediately leaped out of the carriage, sword in hand, ready for battle. He was so swift that I didn't even realize when he drew his sword." The two soldiers were truly amazed, all 10 giants. "Please, tell us the details," they urged. Massey hesitated, unable to find the words. "Well, we were sitting in the carriage when suddenly a loud scream pierced the quiet air. The sound was chilling, and for a moment, I thought the sky was falling. Kristen immediately leaped out of the carriage, sword in hand, ready for battle. I was so swift that I didn't even realize when he drew his sword." Ulyss exclaimed excitedly, "Of course. No one draws a sword faster than Kristen." Massey continued enthusiastically, and then, Kristen swung his sword, cutting off the giant's arm as if slicing through chains. Ulyss gasped, "Exactly. His sword of justice sliced through the dragon's fiery breath. The other soldier sighed in relief at the thrilling story. That giant monster was nothing compared to him. Massey shouted triumphantly, and then blood sprayed like rain as the giant struggled to lift its severed arm, blood splattering everywhere. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out, making her heart skip a beat. "It took us 2 whole days to clean up that mess," the voice said. Massey jerked back, turning to look at the source of the voice, then hurriedly ran to the base of a nearby tree, startled. "What is he doing here?" she whispered to herself. He continued narrating our adventures. He even contemplated whether to replace the emblem of the white dragon with a black one. After all, bloodstains covered the armor. Ruth looked at me and continued, "After that fierce battle, you've witnessed it all throughout the journey, haven't you?" The twilight descended again, under the oak tree. The 2 soldiers asked, "What is Sorcerer Ruth doing here?" So he handed a bag of herbs I'm making for experiments on the orders of the lady. Ulysses recounted, "The lady just told us the story of Sir Kristen killing 10 giants in the blink of an eye." Ruth rubbed her chin. 10 giants, really? Massey hugged her ledger tightly, pounding her chest. She didn't think anyone would catch her boasting words again. Ruth looked at her and asked, "So, madam, haven't you told them about the battle with the werewolves yet?" The 2 men startled. "Werewolves?" Ruth nodded. "Yes, we encountered 7 werewolves when we approached the Anatole territory. A pack of werewolves attacked us. They were so numerous that their fur covered the ground like a carpet, probably blanketing the entire mountain." Massey intentionally used her ledger to cover her flushed face, wishing for a hole to swallow her up then and there. Ruth suddenly suggested that Madam should narrate every detail of that battle, right? She felt embarrassed and hesitated, while Ruth looked at her embarrassed demeanor. "Perhaps we shouldn't waste any more time while she's busy like this, right?" Massey immediately turned around. "That's right. At the moment, I'm not quite free." She reminded herself, "Lord, I should leave here before my mouth starts prattling nonsense again." Then Ruth suddenly spoke up, "Speaking of which, I forgot in the midst of chatting about monster slaying, there's urgent news for the madam." Massey was taken aback. "Urgent news?" Ruth handed her a paper. "Sir Kristen used the magical equipment at the royal castle to send this letter to my tower. He planned to leave the royal castle as soon as the celebration ended. The Knights group might take about 15 days, or maybe with their speed, around 10 days, to arrive home." Massey took the paper, her heart beating faster. "It must be that Kristen is." Ruth sighed. "I guess he didn't want to stay there for a second longer if there wasn't anything to do." Ulysses chuckled. "He's probably worried about Anatole's safety, so he returned early like that. If there are many werewolves around here, Anatole is probably in danger." Massey hugged the paper and hurriedly ran off. "Okay, thank you for letting me know. I have to visit the forge here." Ruth waved nonchalantly. "No need to say goodbye. I know you're very busy." Those words hit Massey's dark heart, making her startle. "I'm leaving." The 2 soldiers called out behind her, "Madam, wait for us." Massey tried to walk faster, the sound of her footsteps echoing on the floor, feeling the warmth from the paper in her hands. Then Massey suddenly stopped, pondering, reminiscing about the beautiful memories. Massey hugged the warm paper so tightly that she could feel Ruth's gentleness too. "My Kristen."